Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker for My Favorite Things, and today I'm sharing a card design with you which uses complementary colors in order to really make your design stand out. I started this card by picking out this really cute image of a cat from the Potty Time stamp set, and I stamped that onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock using a Copic-friendly black ink. So I'm going to be coloring in this image with my Copic markers, and if you're curious about any of the colors that I'm using, I do have the marker caps set off to the side there so that you can see those colors. And I'm going to be using a lot of orange colors for this cat. I thought that this little guy would look really cute as an orange tabby cat. The technique that I use for my Copic coloring is pretty simple, and I like to work in small sections. So the first thing that I do when I'm working on a section is I fill in the section with my lightest shade of color, and then I work my way up to the darkest color. And I'm just adding those darkest colors into the areas that I want to be shaded. Now, when I think about where to place my shadows, I don't mind if it's not completely accurate because this is a card that I'm making for a friend and a friend's not going to care if your shadows are totally perfect or not, but I do like to still try, and so I think about where those shadows are going to be. For example, one of the places that you're going to find shadows typically is underneath things. So for this image, I put shadows underneath the arms and underneath the tail and underneath the chin. Once I had all of my shadows in place, I went back to the lightest shade of marker and I blended those shadows out. To make this a true orange tabby cat, we do need to add in the stripes. So I picked a darker shade of orange and I just added a couple stripes along both sides of the cat. Now, I did mention in the beginning of this video that I want to use complementary colors in order to make my card design really stand out. If you don't know what complementary colors are, if you've ever seen a color wheel, complementary colors are the colors that are directly across from each other on the color wheel. And just like the name suggests, these colors complement each other. They tend to look good together on a design. One color can really make the other one stand out. So the way that I want to use complementary colors in my card design today is by taking the complementary color of my colored in image and putting it on the background so that my image really pops. The main part of my colored in image is the cat, and my cat is orange, so I'm going to be using the complementary color of orange for my background, and that's blue. Also, because I knew I was going to use the complementary color of the cat on the background, I wanted the cat's accessories to be very close to orange, so I used colors that are right next to it on the color wheel. These are called analogous colors. Analogous colors are three colors that are located next to each other on the color wheel, and just like complementary colors, they tend to work really well together, but in a different way. So for the cat's hat and the balloon, I used a lot of red shades, and because red is so close to orange on the color wheel, it's going to stand out a lot more against the blue background than it would have if I had used, for example, some purple colors. Once the coloring was done, I cut out this image and then I moved on to creating my background. Now I wanted to create a really easy, simple background, and I've been really obsessed with cardstock lately, so I pulled out my swatches of cardstock and I went to find all of the different blue colors that I had, and I saw them next to each other and I really liked the look of those colors next to each other. So I cut a few strips of those colors and I'm going to glue them onto this panel of white cardstock. I am going to be making a Slimline card today, so the panel of paper that I'm working on right now is 3 inches by 8 inches. Whenever I'm gluing down strips of cardstock like this, I like to use a liquid adhesive because it allows you a little bit of time to adjust that paper before it holds. That gives you the time to really press those edges together so that it almost looks like this is a piece of pattern paper that you're using instead of strips. Also, I should mention that I didn't really measure these strips when I cut them with my paper trimmer. I just kind of eyeballed it. It didn't really matter to me if they were perfectly the same size, and I think I actually made them pretty close. I don't think you could tell with the naked eye that they're not the same size. Once those were all adhered and they had a little bit of time to dry, I put the panel in my paper trimmer and I cut off any of that excess paper hanging off of the side. And I actually kept all of these tiny little strips of paper because I think that they would look really good on another card if I arranged them into a cool pattern. I picked out a sentiment from that same Potty Time stamp set, and I'm stamping that right onto my background above those strips with a black ink. I'm going to be popping up this panel with some foam tape onto an 8.5 by 3.5 inch card base, which I made out of craft cardstock. Now, when I placed that panel, I accidentally placed it a little bit too far to the right, so there's a little bit of extra space on the left-hand side. So in order to fix that so that it looks like I did it on purpose, I took some string and I wrapped it around the inside of the card, and I'm tying it into a bow on the edge. And that just fills in some of that extra space, and it makes it look like it had a purpose. Sometimes tiny little mistakes are just opportunities to improve your design. I added little pieces of foam tape behind the cat and the balloon, and I popped it up so he's right on top of that blue background. For the finishing touches on this card, I first added 3 clear sequins, and I kind of arranged those around the sentiment and adhered them with a liquid adhesive. And finally, the last thing that I did for this card is I took out my white gel pen and I added some highlights all over my colored in image. I think that this step was especially good for the balloon. I think that the coloring on the balloon looked pretty good, but it looks even better once you add those highlights. After that, this card is all done. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed this card design and that maybe you learned something or got a little bit of inspiration. If you did enjoy this video, I hope that you give some of these techniques a try and maybe use some complementary colors in your next card design. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day today, and I'll see you next time.